Hi everybody, welcome to our very first ever Facebook Live event, and I'm so pleased tonight to be joined by Sinead, who is a registered nurse and the owner of Apply First Aid Northern Beaches. So I hope lots of you join us tonight. Make yourself a cup of tea, think of all the questions you possibly want to think. Sinead's here for up to an hour to answer all of your questions, so dive in. We've actually had a few questions already been sent to us, haven't we, Sinead?
Yeah, we've had a few, so we can certainly deal with them. We will cover all areas of general interest that we know we get recurring questions from parents all the time, and yeah, if you have any questions, just type them in the bottom. If there's anything that we're covering that you'd like further information on, we have some handouts that we'll be talking about, like the emergency response posters. If you want to get a copy of them messaged to you, just put your name on the bottom and what you'd like, and we'll get that happening this evening, tomorrow at some point. So yeah,
do you want to talk a little bit about Apply First Aid before you start?
Yeah, well, I'm a registered nurse. I started training in the hospital setting, I was a trainer for the nurses, and I realised that I liked the training side of it. I then became a first aid trainer. Then I opened up my own business as a first aid trainer, and I now also work for a larger first aid company as their clinical educator, so that all of our first aid trainers are teaching at the same level across the board. We're strictly governed by the Australian Resuscitation Council. They have all their likes and wants and needs has to be met every single time, particularly for all our accredited courses right throughout Australia. All the kids first aid courses are non-accredited. That's actually good because it means that we get to fill the course with things that we know you want to find out about. It's not as strictly governed. So it's not a workplace requirement first aid, that it wouldn't cut it for workplaces, but parents in particular, learn very, very differently. If I have a room full of people that are in there because they need to be there for work, we can teach them in one way. If we're teaching parents, we have to teach that exact same information in a very, very different way, because how you would respond to a CPR situation in a clinical environment to somebody you don't know is entirely different to how you'd respond when it's your own child. I would say without a shadow of a doubt that when adrenaline hits your head, a good 50% of all information is gone, and if adrenaline hits your head at the same time as care factor, you're on your knees. And I know that. I had to call an ambulance for my son about 6 years ago, and I couldn't remember 000. And that's what happened. That's where your head's going to be at. So we start at that point. That's where we're expecting you to be, and we aim to put all our information into your heads in a manner that's more user-friendly than technical. So we do still talk about speeds and depths and ratios and the best way to do CPR, but it has to be that you're not sitting in the corner freaking out because you can't remember your numbers and your speeds and your depths, because you won't. Not when it's your kid. So we try to teach more the principle of why we're doing it and get you user friendly. And even the Australian Resuscitation Council have acknowledged that a wee bit, and it used to be very, very governed, different CPR levels for babies and adults and children. Now they have it across the board, and they are even saying that there's no such thing as bad CPR. So we do have proper depths, speeds, ratios, but any speed, any depth, any ratio is going to be good. It's going to be some amount of getting oxygen into someone's brain. So that's basically what it is. And the reason why we teach first aid and CPR in particular is because from a parent's perspective, it would be your worst nightmare to find out tomorrow how easy it would have been to save your life today, the child's life today. So that's what it's about. It's not about freaking you out and telling you all the things that can go wrong with your child, because once you have kids, everything's going to go wrong. If there's an accident, they'll find a way to have it. So it's more about empowering you to know that you can handle that situation. And you can. Like, after we've shown somebody how to do CPR, you literally go, wow, that's amazing. In all our classes, we feel quite strongly about everybody having a mannequin in the class so that everybody gets that hands-on approach. I could stand here and I could talk to you for hours about how to do CPR. You have to have that feel for it. You have to know how far to push down. And until you've had a proper run with the mannequins, it doesn't sit in your head as well. And I would say 99% of all the parents we've taught, they say afterwards, wow, it was that hands-on that really cemented the knowledge in their heads, made them remember it quite well. And the little mannequins that we use, it's a little bit freaky, you can see they've got plastic across their mouth. That's because they've all got their own little lungs. So when you're actually blowing in and giving a breath on a baby, you actually really do feel what it feels like to give a breath to a baby, to have to push up against the weight of their chest, which is, a lot of people think with a little baby you just kind of go and the air will end up in there, and that's not the case. Also, when we talk about compressions, we talk about how deep we want them to go and how fast we want them to go. You're really not going to know if you're doing it right or wrong until you get that practice run. So with our little guys, they light up. When you're doing your compressions fast enough, you're going to get 2 green lights to really give you a good feel for it, and I can talk more about that later. And also, when we're talking about a compression, so what a compression basically is you're pushing down on the heart through the rib cage. So every time you push down on the rib cage, you get the heart to pump again. You have to go down 1/3 of the depth of the chest, which is a little bit of a guessing game, really, if you're looking at someone's chest and you're trying to gauge what 1/3 of the depth is. So with these little guys as well, you get that sound indicator when you've gone down deep enough. Now, I know real babies aren't going to have that sound indicator, but when you've had that practice run in the field, because people are always really surprised at how far you have to push down. And again, it's just a case of getting that actual practice run, and once you can feel it, it'll be more familiar to you again. So obviously tonight we're going to cover all the areas of interest, the questions that have previously been sent in. You've had a number of them come in, and we will definitely cover all of them. What we would like to say, I would certainly like to say it, is this is not normally a forum for asking medical advice. Northern Beaches Mums page is wonderful for many, many different things, but not for asking for medical advice. We see it coming through, and I'd say 50% of the information is wrong, that people are given, people that are in a panic moment, and they will take on anything. 50% of it's wrong, and I'd say the other 50% of it is dangerous. We're fortunate enough to live in an environment where we don't need to rely on Facebook when we're having a medical emergency. We do now have Health Direct, and we'd certainly recommend that everybody uses that. That's such an amazing service, and it's free. So it's like as if you've got a new best friend who's a registered nurse and she has no life. So you can ring her any time of the day or night. That is 1-800-022-222. Again, we can put these numbers at the bottom later on if you want them. That is a fantastic resource. Most of the time when there's something wrong, if your child is sick, you're exhausted, you're not making clear decisions, maybe it's the middle of the night and you just need someone to say you're doing the right thing, and that can get you on to that next level. Sometimes you need someone to say maybe you do need to see a doctor, or you do need to get an ambulance, and it empowers you to make that next decision. So the next time you're standing there in the middle of the night going, oh gosh, do I alternate Panadol and Nurofen, or what should I do if this happens and I can't remember? Just ring them, because they will always put you into the same place. The other thing they're very, very clever for is kind of knowing what's going around in your area at the moment. We can no longer wait for a pitch perfect presentation of any illness. Things are presenting differently all the time. We've had whooping cough with no whoop. We've had whooping cough with no cough. So these guys know what's out there, they know what to look for, and they can pick between the different signs and symptoms that you might not know. Meningitis is a perfect example of that. There's loads of different little signs of meningitis, and again, if anybody wants me to send a copy of this, I can send you a copy on the bottom. But we don't wait for every child to present with every sign and every symptom in order to make a diagnosis. Sometimes the meningitis is presenting without a rash, which lulls you into a false sense of security. So again, it's just a case of getting the best information that you can all the time, and from them numbers. Health Direct is a really, really good resource. Another good resource we have now is the after hours doctors. So the after hours doctors work on the after hours that your normal GP works, say 5 o'clock in the evening until 8 o'clock in the morning. A lot of people are under the impression that this is for medical emergencies. It's not for medical emergencies. It's actually to keep your bum off a seat in casualty so that that seat is free for somebody else. It's also so you're not sitting in casualty with your child picking up every other germ in the place. And it's actually ideal in an environment where you know what's wrong with your child, but you just need a prescription, or you need somebody to get you onto your next level of care. So if my kids had tonsillitis when I came home from work at 4, I wouldn't even try and get a GP's appointment. I'd wait till 5, ring these guys, and they will come out to see me. So they come to see me in my home. It's bulk billed, and then they send a note to your GP. So your GP gets a follow-up the following day to know what's happened and what treatment has been given. Now, it could take an hour and it could take 4 hours for them to come out to see you, but when it's a prescription that you need, and in the meantime you can be cooking dinner or doing whatever you need to do around the house, that is absolutely fine. Ideal. It is not okay if you're watching a deteriorating child. If you're watching a deteriorating child, you need to be getting an ambulance, because that 1 to 4 hours is too long under that circumstance. If you are watching a deteriorating child and you decide to make that call to go to the hospital, never ever drive if you're on your own. So if you're on your own, stay put, because if you put a sick child into the back seat of your car, you'll spend very, very little time watching the road ahead of you. If things go pear-shaped, you have to pull over, you might miss your ambulance, you'll probably have forgotten your phone in the panic, and you're just adding and adding more and more time before you get your child to help. So if there's 2 adults at home, that's absolutely fine, but if you're on your own, stay put and let them come to you.
That's great advice.
It's the type of advice that if you haven't heard it, you'll question yourself. There's a lot of little things like that that people just need to know. Like when you ring an ambulance and they start asking you all these questions, you think, oh my God, just help me. They need to know the answers to all these questions. And a very important one, where we let ourselves down an awful lot, is where are you? So the average response time for an ambulance in New South Wales is between 11 and 13 minutes. That's only where they know where you are. So if you live on, say, Forest Way, there could be 7 Forest Ways in New South Wales. The only way they can determine that it's the one where you are is to ask you what your cross street is. And that's why it's really important to know what your cross street is. And that's why when we're talking about our emergency response posters, we'll ask you to put that information up there at the time. You might know your cross street in a calm moment. When you're panicking, it's gone. Your mother-in-law definitely won't know it, and your babysitter mightn't even know what a cross street is. So to have that sort of information written down is very, very clever. Okay, so when we do talk about emergency response posters, everybody in the classes that we deliver, and I should say we deliver first aid and CPR classes to parents right across the Northern Beaches, North Shore. We come to you at a time that suits you. You can have your bobs with you. It's all about making it easy and making it user-friendly. If I'm saying to you, no babies, and you have to come at a time that suits me, it's just not going to work. So it has to be user-friendly and easy. So we come out to your homes. As I said, we're very insistent on the fact that everybody needs to have hands-on turns with the mannequins, even though these are paediatric classes that we do predominantly for parents. Sorry, my husband's been here and he has added his little bit of state of origin for the night. We also always bring the adult mannequins as well, because whilst we're there, while we're having a turn with it, you may as well have a practice run on both to appreciate the difference and how they feel different at the time. So with every class that we deliver, everybody gets a turn the mannequins, everybody gets a free first aid book. I know the day of books is a little bit behind the times. Everyone thinks you can Google things. I can tell you, when you're in the middle of a panic situation, you can go from having a headache to being clinically dead in about 2 clicks. So you're definitely better off to get a book that you know is up to date, resourceful, and has all the information that you need in there. This, ringing Health Direct and things like that, is your better option. The emergency response posters that we give out, this is how everybody across Australia and New Zealand teaches first aid. And if anybody has ever done CPR before, you'll be familiar with the Doctor ABC. It's now Doctors, and the reason why we've had to add the S is because we're so bad at calling for help. We really need to get in there calling for help early in the piece. And if there was one thing you can remember and push for your babysitters, it is as soon as a child is unresponsive, you need an ambulance. You do not have control of the situation, and that is before we're checking for a pulse, before we're checking for a breath, before we do any of them things. You want to be calling for help at that point. Okay. What is good to know is that if you have your worst case scenario and a child has stopped breathing, you don't need to be worried at that point about what's caused it. If it was asthma or if it was anaphylaxis or whatever it is, at this point, CPR is simply a holding pattern. Your job is to keep this person alive until the ambulance arrives. You are not expected to fix, cure, or bring this person around. Your job is simply to keep a delivery of oxygen to their brain until the ambulance arrives. And the reason why that is important is because, well, the reason I'm alive right now is because my heart is pumping. And as my heart is pumping, it is pumping blood round and round my body. And as the blood goes around and round my body, it stops up at the bottom of my lungs. It picks up all the oxygen that I've just breathed in, and then it delivers that oxygen to my brain and organs. That is a process that has to happen in order for death to happen, if there's a lack of oxygen going to the brain. So if you come across somebody and they don't have a pulse and they're not breathing, the issue is in that situation when there's no oxygen going to their brain. You can stop that from happening by giving them oxygen, by blowing into their lungs, and by then circulating that oxygen around the body by doing the compressions. That is a good thing to keep in your mind for that emergency situation. You don't have to worry about what's wrong. You don't have a medical degree. You don't need to freak out about everything else that's going on. Your job is simply to give the oxygen and to encourage circulation around the body. I need to take a drink of water. All that talk about oxygen.
So do you think, Sinead, that we should all have this on our fridges?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
So that's not pretty. You're not going to want it on your lounge room wall. But I would suggest everybody has one, at least for behind the pantry door or somewhere like that. And I'm more than happy to slide these off to you guys if you just put your names underneath, and I'll get them messaged over to you as well.
Absolutely, we'll share that information.
Perfect. So, before you put them up on your lounge room walls, or behind your pantry door, one thing I would suggest is you do write a few pieces of information on there that are useful in that emergency situation. So first of all, write your phone number. And I know you know your phone number, but that's the sort of information that goes furry around the edges when you're panicking. Also, it could be you that's lying on the ground needing help and somebody else has to make the call for you. So just write your phone number down there. Excuse me. Secondly, write down your cross street. As I said, if the ambulance doesn't know where you are, they can't get to you in time. Now, your cross street is obviously the 2 streets closest to where you are at the moment. If you were in the national park for a walk with your kids and there's an issue when you're there, how do you know where you are or how to tell the ambulance where you are if there is no street, much less a cross street? Okay, so people realise they're clever now, you can get GPS on your phone. There's one app that we really, really love. It's a free app and it's called Emergency Plus. That's a plus sign, not P-L-U-S. And why we love that is when you open the app, it gives you a drop down of your exact location and you can then dial 000 from within the app. So you don't need to be coming in and getting out of the app all the time. Now, it's free. There's loads of apps like that that are free. That's the only one that we have found that doesn't have advertising going through it, because we always say the last thing you want is to be looking at a big ad when you're in the middle of a panic situation. So, Emergency Plus is a fantastic app to have on your phone. If you have older kids, the one other app that we recommend as a safety feature is the Daniel Morecambe Foundation app. If my kids were at a bus stop or they were somewhere and they were feeling a bit vulnerable, they can open the app and press the button, and that will automatically send a drop down of their location to my husband and I, or whoever you nominate to be their people, and so it lets us know exactly where they are when they're feeling vulnerable. So they're 2 very, very clever apps. Speaking of phones as well, another thing is once our kids discover iTunes and things like that, we all lock our phones. Once you lock your phone, it's really, really important to teach your kids and your parents or your babysitters how to make an emergency call from a locked mobile phone, because that will be the situation if you were ever to collapse at home. So it's different for all the phones. I know with the iPhone, as soon as I touch it, it'll probably unlock. So if I walked into a room and you were on the ground and I had to make an emergency call for you, the first thing it's going to do is ask for my code, which you won't know. So down on the bottom left hand side it says emergency. You won't be able to see that when you're panicking, so it's good to know where it is now. Just press that button, and as soon as you do, it brings up another screen from which you can dial 000 or 112. So it's really good for people to know that that is there and how to access that.
There's a couple of questions on these apps actually.
Okay.
Somebody asking, what was the other app called, please?
Emergency Plus was the first one. So it's emergency and the plus sign, not P-L-U-S. Free app, as I said, and really, really clever for a way for you to always know where you are, so that if you're calling for help, that it's really, really clever. The other app then is the Daniel Morecambe Foundation app. So Daniel Morecambe is that wee boy who went missing in Queensland years and years ago, and I think it's just been brought out by his family, perhaps, or the foundation, I'm sure it is, just to keep people safe. And even for adults, if you went for a walk at night time and you just thought, oh, something's a bit strange here, you can just press that app and somebody automatically knows where you are, and they'll be able to help you a whole lot easier. So it's a lot of, this is about not leaving yourself in a vulnerable situation, making sure that you always can call for help, and make sure that you know where you are at the time. So with our emergency response posters, and as I said, yes, it's a great idea for everybody to have these in their homes. Once it's in your home, that information is there for you in a panic situation. Even in a hospital setting, we use this. We use that same DRS, ABCD to make sure that everybody is working in the same line. So you need to put down there your phone number, your cross street, and lastly, where to turn off the electricity in your home. So if you were to walk into your child's room tonight and they were wrapped up or compromised in an electrical cord, you can't help them until the electricity has been turned off. So it's really, really important that everybody figures out in a nice calm moment, when nothing else is happening, that's where to go. Find out where your electricity switch is, so that you'll be able to turn off your electricity. Now, once you've that written down, and that is somewhere up in your home, that is there for you, for your babysitter, for your mother-in-law, for whoever it is, just to be able to grab that quickly. Because as I said, it sounds ridiculous, but even just to be able to see 000 in the moment of an emergency is very, very beneficial.
Some of the mums the other night were actually questioning what is the correct number to call in an emergency, and there was a huge variety of answers. You know, some people mentioned 112.
Yes, so 112 is now our international emergency number. It's not right across the board yet, but it is. So how many people go away on holidays to Fiji or Bali, and you never think to ask, what's the emergency number when I'm there? That will be 112. So 112 we don't teach to children just yet, because you can't dial 112 from a landline. You can only dial it from a mobile phone. But it is very, very clever. So you can also dial 112 from a mobile phone that has no credit and no SIM card. So that's a great way to get away from the vulnerable area that so many of us are in if you don't have a landline. So if your babysitter comes, they spend an hour on Facebook, because they will, they run out of battery. How do they call an ambulance for your child? So hopefully your neighbour's there, they can use that. But if not, if you had any old mobile phone at all just plugged in, sticker on it saying 112, you'll always be able to access emergency services from that number. So it's clever. 000 is still our primary number, so if you can at all, use 000. 000 as well, people need to realise that if you're with a particular server or provider and they're offline today, or you've got no coverage, that doesn't mean that you can't dial 000. So when you ring 000, they look for all the providers every time. Now, when an ambulance comes as well, they will check your phone to see if you filled in your health app. That's a very, very clever little feature on your phone. It's an app that's already there when you get it. And in there, you know, it'll be your next of kin, allergies, little bits of information like that. So if you were to collapse out of the shopping centre and you've got a toddler with you, what happens to that toddler if nobody knows who you are? So get that little bit of information into your phone.
That's really important. I didn't know about that.
Nobody knows. We only know this because we hear all the stories. I think some people think, oh my God, we're doing everything wrong. You know, I've done everything wrong. It's just a case that we pick up all the little tips and tricks as we go. So yeah, simply by grabbing one of these, and as I said, we're more than happy just to message them over to you. Print it out, your phone number, your cross street, and where to turn off the electricity in your area, and that will get you across the line. So every single thing that we do in first aid, we do exactly in this order. As I said, it's doctors, A, B, C, D. D is the other new addition, and D is for defibrillator. The reason we've got this here now is because defibrillators are in more and more places. We have way more access to them. They used to be so complicated to use. They used to be so expensive. They were massive. They just weren't available to us. Now they are so small. They're so portable. They're so easy to get your hands on. This is what an average defibrillator looks like. So you buy these. They come with a 7-year battery, and they self-check every day. So you can basically buy them and ignore them. The only thing you need to do is change your pads at some point. The advantage of these is that if I was to have a cardiac arrest right now, my chance of survival is approximately 4%. If I have a cardiac arrest and we've got a defibrillator available to me, my chance of survival goes up to about 74%. So they're magic, and they are not for nurses and doctors to use, they are for your average person to use.
So is this something that should be in the cupboard beside the first aid kit?
We'd love them too. I'd be more than happy to send everybody a defibrillator. Look, in fairness, they're about the same price as the Thermomix, so a lot of people have the Thermomix.
Yeah.
We'd love them too, but they're just turning up everywhere. The signage is AED, Automatic External Defibrillator. You go to a Ring the Mall or any of the shopping centres, they're all over the place.
Okay.
So what used to be really freaky is they're like jump leads for the heart. So if the rhythm in your heart, the electrical activity, goes into bad rhythms, that'll cause cardiac arrest. What this does is it gives a big bolt of electricity into the heart to stop that erratic rhythm and to allow the heart to start off again in a good rhythm. It used to be hard to figure out when to give the shock. So we used to have to look at the rhythm, try and remember which one was which one do we shock. Oh, room for error there.
Yeah.
Now you don't even need to know what a rhythm is. You take the pads out of the unit, and once you turn this on, she starts shouting at you. She's like a really good wife, in that unless and until you've done exactly what she wants you to do, she will not leave it alone.
Okay.
She will continually shout the instructions, which is what you want, because if you're panicking and fumbling, you're not going to get left behind in the instructions. So you take the pads out, put them on the person's chest, and the first thing the machine does is analyzes to see which rhythm the heart is in. So if the person is in a rhythm that should be shocked, it will allow you to shock them. And if they're not, it won't even let you charge them up.
That's amazing.
So you're super, super safe using these. They are absolutely awesome, awesome pieces of equipment. So get to know where they are in your environment. Train stations, RSL clubs, they're all over the place. And once you start looking, you'll see more and more of them.
They all look like that?
They all look a little bit different.
Okay.
Different shapes. This is the one that we love, simply because there are more expensive ones with more bells and whistles. It becomes too complicated when you're panicking. And then there are cheaper alternatives, and it's really the one time where you want your equipment to actually work for you. And again, if anybody wants more information on these guys, we can send you more information afterwards as well. Alright, so I have to go down the DRS ABCD poster. The first thing I'd like to say is everybody should learn CPR. I mean, I know I'm quite passionate about CPR, but it should be a compulsory thing that absolutely everybody knows how to do. It is not hard. It is just not a hard thing to learn how to do. It is so simple, and it literally is the difference between life and death. And we see that sliding doors moment way too often. So if we've got two houses next door to each other and there's a child choking in each house, in one house they call the ambulance, and in the other house they call the ambulance. As we said earlier on, the average response time from an ambulance is between 11 and 13 minutes. In this house, if nobody knows how to do basic life support, that child's brain will be without oxygen for that 11 to 13 minutes. Now, the ambulance personnel may well be able to get out that obstruction like that, but if that child's brain has been without oxygen for 11 to 13 minutes, that is not a good outcome. Whereas in the other house, you call the same ambulance, 11 to 13 minutes, but if you know how to do the most basic life support when you're waiting, just blowing in air and getting it circulating around, they will also get that obstruction out in a couple of seconds, and that child will be sitting on your knee that night. And that is such a big difference based on some very, very simple and easy training. And there is no such thing as bad CPR. There's no such thing. So we really need to be aware of the fact you can't do it badly. Any attempt at CPR is better than no attempt. So the old-fashioned first aid courses where there's people standing up there telling you you're doing it wrong, you're going to kill that person. That person hasn't got a pulse and they're not breathing. You can't harm a dead person. So anything that you can do at that stage can be beneficial. So it's all about realising we can do it really, really well. We can do a good job on this. We also need to be not afraid of damage that you can do. Very unlikely in babies, but in adults, if you're pushing down a third of the depth of someone's chest, that's a long way down. And our bones aren't used to being manipulated that much, so you will get broken ribs. And we just have to accept that. Nobody wants to break somebody's ribs. But you know what? We can fix broken ribs tomorrow. If there is no CPR happening now, there is no tomorrow for that person. So we need to get past all those sorts of situations. So it's all about get in there and give it a go. That'll be the biggest difference. What else was I going to say? The cracked ribs, yes. Not every time you come across someone that needs your help are they not breathing and no pulse rate. Sometimes they're simply unconscious. And in that case, what's happened is an unconscious person is the same as someone that's had a general anesthetic, in that every single muscle in your body relaxes, including your tongue. So if you go unconscious and you're lying on the ground, your tongue will automatically block off your airway. So it is a massive rule in a first aid situation. If you ever come across anybody that is unconscious and they are breathing, you must always roll them over onto their side. That will allow the tongue to fall forward. So that is a massive rule in first aid. Even if you're concerned about a spinal injury, we still roll them over onto their side, because there is no point in having a perfectly aligned spine if you're dead. So that could simply be enough to save somebody's life. If you ever come across anybody that's unconscious and they are breathing, you simply flip them over onto their side. Recovery position. So basically, as long as they're on their side and that tongue falls forward, that could save somebody's life. So people will not die from that epileptic seizure. They'll die from being left unconscious lying on their back. So anytime you come across a child, if your child ever had a seizure or they were unconscious afterwards just from a febrile convulsion, any injury, you simply roll them over onto their side and they're quite safe at that point. Okay, I'll just quickly take you down the length of the DRS ABCD poster, the keys of what we do in every CPR situation. So first of all is danger. We talk quite an amount about this when we're doing our accredited training. There is no point where somebody, irregardless of any duty of care, needs to help somebody else if they're putting themselves in danger. So your safety is priority. Clearly this isn't one we focus on very much when it comes to parents, because I know you would walk through fire to save your own child in this situation. The next is R for responsiveness. We need to check and see if this person is in fact responsive. If you walked into a room and I was unconscious on the ground, you can't just jump on me and start doing CPR in case I'm having a nap. In saying that, people often worry, if I start doing CPR on someone and they didn't need it, what would happen? So the truth of it is, you can't stop somebody's heart by doing CPR. And if I gave you a compression, even one, pushed your ribs down a third of your depth of your chest, if you don't sit up and hit me, you are so unconscious that there's a good chance you're going to need CPR anyway. So if you're ever unsure whether you need to do CPR or not, err on the side of caution. Okay, so you're going to check and see if somebody's unresponsive. If your child is unresponsive, you can't get them to respond to you in any form, that is not normal, and that is where you must call for help, and that is really, really important. So CPR is a holding pattern only. CPR has no way of reversing what's caused that person to go on the ground. So if this child has been choking, CPR is not going to get that object out of their throat. What CPR is going to do is continually give them a delivery of oxygen to their brain, which means that they will be left uncompromised once that's been removed. So we very often hear of people going, I did CPR, I kept going for about 10 minutes and it wasn't working. You're not expected to see a recovery. People do not sit up halfway through CPR and go, thanks, that was awesome. It does not work like that. We're not expecting you to see anything. Your job is simply to keep a delivery of that oxygen going to the child's brain until the ambulance arrives. They will have the equipment, the medication, the instrumentation to do what needs to be done at that point. So, really, really important. Anybody that's looking after your child should have a basic knowledge of this as well. And calling for help early is really, really important. As soon as you do call for help, two things happen. Number one, that 11 to 13 minutes timer has started. So you can see there's an end time in this already. The other thing that's happened is you've now got a reassuring voice in your ear. A reassuring voice that has a lot of questions they need to ask you, but it's to enable them to help you best. So go with it. Realise that they're not just out to annoy you. There's a reason for all these questions. Okay, calling for help if you're at home on your own would also consist of screaming your lungs out. Getting any neighbour, anybody passing by to come in and help. Because if you have to do CPR, particularly on the larger size mannequins, for any length of time, that is exhausting. It's really, really, really hard work. People love to tell stories about how I did CPR for 40 minutes. No, they didn't. It's absolutely exhausting. So if you can get anybody, even if they don't know anything about CPR, to come in, to start doing compressions for a little while, that will allow you to have a break and it'll mean you can keep going a whole lot longer. Nothing takes from the actual practice of doing CPR in the mannequin to get that good feel for getting the oxygen in and then circulating around the body. So once you've called for help, the next thing we need to do is check the airway. Now the airway is the way the air gets into the lungs, which is obviously a big part of doing CPR. So the way you check someone's airway is literally to open their mouth and look in to see if that airway is clear. If not, if it's an obstruction, we have to get rid of that, and that's why it's so important for parents and any carers to know exactly what to do if a child is ever choking. Children, when you're introducing solids, they're going to have little choking issues all the time. Also, foreign objects, basically anything they can put in their mouth, they're going to put it back in there. And again, learning how to deal with a choking child is such a quick and easy skill. It is so simple, and you just need to know that and you'll be able to get past it over time. After we've checked the airway, you check to see if your child is breathing. There is no place anymore where we stop and check for a pulse in either an adult or a baby, because we know you cannot maintain your pulse without your breaths and vice versa. Also, when you're panicking, you're going to find a pulse in the wall and it would simply be your own pulse rebounding back at you. Then we're going to, if the child is breathing, then we're going to just roll them over onto their side, and if they're not breathing, we know they don't have a pulse, and that's when we need to start doing CPR, which is to create their own pulse, get the air in, create their pulse, and keep the oxygen circulating around the body. And just remember, don't stop, simply keep going. 30 compressions to 2 breaths is our ideal ratio. 30 compressions to 2 breaths at a speed of between 100 and 120 beats per minute, which is really fast. So to do your compressions fast enough, you'll be going at 2 per second.
Oh, wow.
So that is an awful lot faster than anybody would take for granted. After you've done that about 30 times, the blood's been going round and round and round and round, you start running out of oxygen, and that's when we're going to stop and do 2 breaths. You fill up the lungs with air, and then you deliver that around as well. Now there's lots of different techniques you need to learn how to deliver that oxygen correctly into their lungs. With an adult, if they're lying on their back, the tongue is blocking the airway. So how do you get the air into their lungs? So in an adult, you do a full head and neck tilt, and that lifts the tongue up out of the airway. Whereas in a young baby, if you do a full head and neck tilt, you actually kink off their airway. So in a small child, you do CPR in the neutral position. That's all well and good, but if there's a Lego head here or something, that position could be different as well. So what we always teach is you've got the position right when you see the lungs lifting when you're blowing in. And again, that's where the practice on the mannequins comes in and makes it really easier to deal with.
You know what you're looking for.
Yeah, well, it's just, you'll actually do it wrong first, and that's kind of almost the idea, and you learn how to correct it, because every time and every situation will be that little bit different. So it's a kind of, if we teach you the principle of why you're doing it that way, that will sit in your head that little bit easier. So, did you have some other questions coming in there?
Some questions.
Yep. So, I will just quickly say, there are, as I said, we come out to your homes for groups of 6 people anytime you want. You just tell us where you need us to be and we'll come out. Otherwise, we do have a couple of public classes coming up. We've got one with Baby of Mine, that's Glenys Howard. I think loads of ladies know her. She's the guru in everything to do with sleeping and feeding techniques, as well as baby massage. So we've got one there on Saturday the 17th, I think it is, at 2 o'clock. And we also have one up at North Head with Renee at Aura Studios. So Renee is a physiotherapist who specialises in pre and antenatal physio and exercises as well. So they're always awesome at giving us venues so that people can come to, so they don't have that group of 6 they want to work with.
That's fantastic. One of the questions that was sent in to us was about the use of an EpiPen and how to do that correctly. Yeah, okay. So anybody that gets diagnosed with anaphylaxis, they'll be given a prescription to get an EpiPen. So an EpiPen is an auto-injector that holds 1 dose of adrenaline, which is the treatment that's needed at the time of anaphylaxis. It is really important that everybody knows how to administer these, because an adult that knows what they're doing can go from being about to give it to not being able to give it in about 5 minutes. So basically you should be able to grab these and give them at any time. If your child ever gets a diagnosis of anaphylaxis, you want everybody that's going to be anywhere around your child to be able to do this in the dark.
because you do not need people to be standing there at that point when their hand is shaking and they're panicking, trying to figure out what to do with these things. So it's really, really important. More and more and more people are carrying these for all sorts of different reasons. So there are baby doses and there are adult doses. Whatever they're carrying will be most likely the appropriate one for them. You take it from them. We're going to administer it with a closed fist. You don't want a thumb on either side, because if your thumb is on the wrong side, then you can get the injection of medication into your thumb and there's none left for the person that needs it. The rule is, if you think somebody needs it, you give it. If you're wrong, it is adrenaline. Adrenaline is a naturally forming hormone in your own body. You cannot be allergic to it. So if you think you need it, you give it. If this person in front of you is having difficulty breathing and you're thinking, oh gosh, they've got asthma as well, I don't know, it could be asthma, it could be anaphylaxis, give it and follow it up with the asthma medication afterwards. So to give it, closed fist. The only place you can administer it is the upper outer thigh. No Pulp Fiction movements. The needle is nowhere near long enough to get to the heart like that. If I try to give it now, it won't work because we haven't taken off the cap. There's a safety cap at the top that needs to be removed, and the way to remember which side is blue to the sky and orange to the thigh. Closed fist, remove your cap, whack it in. When you hear the click, you know it's in. But what we need to remember is that it takes 10 seconds for the drug to leave the auto-injector and go into the leg. So you have to hold it there for that 10 seconds. When you pull it out, it's a self-retracting needle. So if this was a child and you're running up to them about to give them a needle, even if they know they need it, they're going to pull away. Yeah. And if they miss and the needle self-retracts, you've lost your chance with that. So it's important to hold their leg, secure it, and then get it in. Now, as soon as you give it, you're going to second guess yourself because you're going to say, oh, the child actually looks fine. I don't know if they really needed it in the first place. That's the adrenaline working. The adrenaline works in really fast, but it also works out quite quickly. Okay. So the rules are, if you think they need it, you give it. If you give it, you must call an ambulance. And if there's another one available to you in 5 minutes, you can give the other one in 5 minutes. We want that person sitting down. We would like that person lying down, but if anybody has trouble breathing, they won't lie down for you. We want as little movement, so always you go and get it, you bring it to them, because we don't want them pushing up their heartbeat and their pulse at that point. Okay. More and more people are carrying these, so it's really important that everybody knows how to give them. If you've got friends coming to your house that carry these, you need to know when they're coming in the door where it is. It needs to be in your hand, not maybe in a school bag, because you don't want to find out later on when you need it that they don't have it. So same with puffers. If children need medications, you need to have it and know where it is at that time. So speaking of puffers, this is the universal puffer that we give if anyone's having an asthmatic attack. That is the same colour and shape worldwide. If anybody is concerned about asthma and they haven't got a diagnosis, what we have in Australia is the asthmatic first aid asthma plan, and that is what we do for anyone without a diagnosis. So it's teaching you how to give the puffer, and of course always with the puffer we always use a spacer. So the spacer acts as a reservoir for the medication, and by using the reservoir you actually increase the absorption of the medication hugely. Otherwise a lot of the medication simply lines the back of the throat and the mouth. Okay. So it's almost as important to have the spacer as it is to have the puffer. What other one did you have there?
Lots of questions about ticks and how to treat tick bites.
Okay, so ticks are a huge concern, particularly on the northern beaches. It's a massive concern in the last few years, and ticks are not new. So we're fortunate in that we have Professor Van Noonan. She's an associate professor at North Shore. She's figured it out that it's not the ticks that we're allergic to, it's the way we're removing them that's causing the ticks to do that spew that's causing the anaphylaxis. So what's happening with people now is they're getting bitten by a tick, they're then becoming anaphylactic to ticks. A lot of them go on then to develop mammalia anaphylaxis, which is a anaphylaxis to red meat, and they're then becoming anaphylactic to red meat and red meat products. Now it hasn't been around long enough for us to know if people are coming out the other side of it and then no longer anaphylactic to that product or not, but what we do know, it's all about the way we're removing the ticks. So the way we will ensure that our children don't get this anaphylaxis is by removing the ticks correctly. So for years and years we've always removed ticks with tweezers. What I can say to you is that's the wrong way to do it. You will hear of hundreds of ways to remove a tick, and there are so many ways to remove a tick. There's only one way to remove a tick that removes it without them being allowed to do that spew that causes the anaphylactic reaction. So we'll hear about peppermint oil, we'll hear about this, that and the other, and twirling it. There's hundreds of ways to remove it, and they'll all remove them, but they all agitate them prior to removal that allows them to do that spew for anaphylaxis. So the rule of thumb is that we must freeze them and not squeeze them. So we're advised to freeze the ticks using a cream called Lightlear, which is actually an old scabies cream. So you put the cream on the tick, and a very important part of this process is to then allow the tick to fall off itself. So this is for children and for the smaller ticks. If it's an adult's tick or big tick that's been well fed, for a child over 4, we use Wart Off, and again you simply take it off, put it over the tick, spray it, and allow the tick to fall off itself. Now, Professor Van Noonen's research has shown that all of the reactions have occurred on the removal if it was done incorrectly. So it's not a medical emergency to remove a tick quickly, it's imperative that it's removed correctly. That's the more important thing to do with that.
That's fantastic information.
Yeah, well, on the northern beaches it's huge, and more and more so because I think it started off with, now they've culled the foxes, so there's more bandicoots, and the bandicoots are the carriers of the ticks, and when they bite the bandicoots and then bite us, it's the protein breakdown between the two. So yeah, that's one form of poisoning. Another number I would suggest that everybody does put into their phone is the number of the Poisons Information Centre, 13 11 26. These guys are magic, and they know how to break down products all the time. So if I was to ring them now and say my kids have eaten a half a bottle of shampoo, some shoe polish and 24 Panadol, they know how to start breaking things down with other household products. They're really, really clever. They know their drugs, their dosages, and exactly what to do. So they send us alerts all the time, which we put on our Facebook page, which is Apply First Aid Northern Beaches. And a very, very common poisoning at the moment in kids under 1 is actually hand sanitizer. So it's in everybody's handbag, little 50 mils, 70% alcohol. It's the perfect shot. And then the next question is, if your child does ingest something like that, do you get them to vomit it out? The answer is no, because anything that will ulcerate on the way down, if we get them to vomit, that'll perforate on the way out. So we don't get children to vomit up anything they've taken, with the one exception is if the Poisons Information Line tell you to, because they know what they're doing with. So other common poisons as well, everybody's aware of the batteries, and we know this, we all put away our batteries, we put everything away high, but we leave the remote control for the television down here. We put away all the drugs, but we leave 2 Panadol in our handbags. A big concern with the batteries is the little birthday cards that sing.
Yeah, tiny, tiny batteries.
Tiny, and it's housed in nothing except cardboard. So if kids are sucking on them, they end up inhaling the batteries, which will start to eat their way out in about 4 hours.
Wow, that's very quick.
It's very quick. And then another concern we have with poisoning is more and more elderly people, so our grandparents that are on long-term painkillers, rather than taking a tablet every 4 to 6 hours, they're now having a patch. They only have to change maybe every 2 to 3 times a week. If that's your grandparents and your child is in that house, if that patch falls off and your child stands on it, they're immediately getting an adult dose of that medication. So that's why we always say, if there's anything happening with your child and you can't figure it out, always strip them down. And that's where you'll find that bite mark or the rash or something random like a patch stuck to them.
Yeah, wow. There's so much to think about. We have some questions about head injuries.
Oh, okay. Head injuries are a very, very tricky one for parents to decide what to do about. First of all, if every time your child gets a head injury, if you do take them to casualty, you'll end up having squatters' rights in casualty. But it's so hard to decide then when should you go and when should you not go. So first of all, I'm a bit of a relaxed when it comes to first aid. I'm very much, we'll wait and see, or don't worry.
Most nurses are.
Most nurses are. With head injuries, I wouldn't second guess a head injury. I have to say, if you think it's serious at all, go to casualty straight away. If you ever have to waste 4 hours, do it for a head injury. If you think it's a small head injury and then you're seeing any side effects afterwards, and we do have a list of side effects, if they get that worsening headache, slurred speech, unsteady walking, unconscious seizures, any of these things, if you get any of these concerns after it, you need to revisit your decision and maybe think about getting them checked out. One thing I can say about head injuries is that you cannot tell a good head injury from a bad head injury from watching the injury happening. So you can see the most horrific injury and that child is fine, and then you see a little child just bump their head on the side of the coffee table and they don't wake up in the morning. And it is simply, I often use the analogy, like your head is like a big hollow ball with a bag of sausages inside, and if you throw that ball onto the ground and the bag of sausages get thrown to the front, if there's bruising, that's like concussion. But if that bruising goes on to become a bleed, that's a brain hemorrhage, and without an MRI scan between one and the other, you don't know what's going on. And that is why you must empower your babysitters to be able to tell you if your child has had a head injury. So if my kids were at school this morning and they got a head injury, and I wasn't told about it, and tonight they're complaining of a headache and feeling sick, I'll say, go to bed. Whereas if I've been told there was a head injury, I now know that there's alarm bells to look out for. So it's really, really important to empower your babysitters with the ability to let you know if your child's had a head injury. And that is why when the kids go to preschool, if there's a bump in the head, you have to sign the forms every time. It's their way of letting you know what to look after afterwards.
So we really all need to send our babysitters to you.
Yes, please. Look, the more people that can be on the same page at the same time, it's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. One other thing that we had come through to us was to talk a bit about car accident safety.
Okay, so when we talk about any accident, any injury, your safety is very, very important. When it comes to car accidents, we so often have a smaller car accident at the site of a major car accident because people are watching what's happened rather than the road. So just make sure you and your kids, if they're with you, are safe at the time. If you come across a car accident and the ignition is still going, just turn off that ignition. And when we talk about calling for help, particularly at the scene of something dramatic, even if there's 6 people there on their mobile phones, you need to still call for help because 4 or 5 of them 6 are most likely videoing the scene than actually making that call. So overcall rather than undercall. If you're involved in a car accident and your baby's in the car behind you and you've been thrown forward and back, they will also have been thrown forward and back. Now these little bones in their neck can break. That'll be fine if they're held in a way that they don't do damage in the meantime. But if someone comes along that doesn't know how to handle a child safely and they lift the baby out of the car seat, then little bones can turn in and cause nerve damage and spinal damage. So we do suggest that in that situation that you remove your child in the car seat. Now paramedics, they know what they're doing, that's absolutely fine. But if you're removing your child from the car, remove them in the car seat. Now that could well mean having to use broken glass and shredding your straps at that point, which means the car seat will be no good, but that is definitely the better thing to do. If you ever come across a car accident and there's an empty car seat, just ascertain if there was a child in that car, because they can become little missiles if the straps aren't on correctly. And that's a huge concern actually at this time of the year, because your car seats have been fitted perfectly to your babies. And when you put the little jumpers and the beautiful coats on, they're not fitted properly and the straps slide off. So rather than putting the coats on and then the car seats, just put a blanket on over them or warm the car more situation. Research is in as well, and there's no shadow of a doubt that rear-facing car seats are the way to go for as long as you can.
Yeah. Pop a little mirror up there so you can see them.
I know.
It's
a tricky one.
Can you talk a bit about burns? We had quite a few mums ask about how to treat burns correctly.
Yes, we have a lot of burns in kids. It's important to realise first of all that kids' skin burns at lower temperatures than ours does. So the same cup of coffee that would just redden my skin would actually blister a child's skin.
Wow.
And an awful lot of the burns that we see are actually from tea and coffee. So it's really important that we teach the people in the coffee shops. It might not be our job, but teach them and be empowered to say, don't hand that cup of coffee over my child's head. Don't let them do that. Also, a lot of the buggies now have a little water bottle holder or a coffee cup holder, and if you've got a coffee in there and you go over a bump, that coffee ends up on top of the child. With burns anywhere on a child's body, it's really, really important to actually remove their nappy as well, because if that fluid drops down at all, the little beads in the disposable nappies retain that heat and they can end up with a growing burn as well. So treatment for burns is, first of all, no ice. A lot of people like to put ice on a burn. It's not a good thing to do. So what we want to do is we want to cool down the area, and we do that by 20 to 30 minutes of room temperature or cool running water. So your worst case scenario, if a child was to pull down a kettle of boiling water, you would dial 000, open your front door and get into the shower with them. So if they're covered completely, you get into the shower with them. A child will always do with you what they won't do for you. If the burn is just on their arm, obviously they don't need to be in the shower completely because they'll be really, really cold with that. So you're 20 to 30 minutes of that room temperature cool running water, and then we want a waterproof dressing on over it. And your Glad wrap is just ideal for that. So never rolling Glad wrap around a child because that doesn't allow for any element of swelling, so you just patchwork it on. The one time we don't put a waterproof dressing on after a burn is if it's a chemical burn. So a chemical burn, we would just be locking it in against them at that time.
Okay, that's useful. A question that was sent in to me this week was about how to treat a child with a fever. Should we be stripping them off or should we be wrapping them up? There's conflicting advice.
So no, if somebody's very, very hot, they can sometimes appear quite shaky. If they're very, very hot, we would like to be trying to cool them down a wee bit, so not over wrapping them. A lot of people are really, really concerned about fevers and, you know, we should give them Panadol and we should give them Nurofen and we should give them... We just need to be aware that whatever is causing the fever is an illness inside them that their body is dealing with. And the Panadol and the Nurofen is going to do nothing for that. But the Panadol and the Nurofen is just making them more comfortable. So if your temperature is making you really dehydrated, you might have a headache, it'll help that, but it's not going to help the temperature. So it's all about keeping them at good temperatures. I think even the SIDS people came out this week and they said, you know, there's no need to be heat in bedrooms and that sort of thing. The kids will be fine. Yeah, just so long as they have the warm clothes on all the time.
I just noticed a question come in from Ree Block. Thanks for your question. Why do we need to apply the Glad wrap over the burn? She didn't hear that one.
So the skin is the largest organ in your body, and when it's here, it's doing a wonderful job at keeping all the moisture in and all the germs out. And that's the biggest problem we have after a burn, is generally dehydration and infection. So the 20 to 30 minutes of the room temperature cool running water is to cool the person down, and then by putting on that waterproof dressing, you're emulating what the skin does normally and keeping the moisture in and keeping the germs out.
Awesome. We've only got time for, we've only got a couple of minutes left. Do you want to very quickly talk about fractures?
Fractures, okay, so pretty much it's a rite of passage for most kids. We've got 206 bones in our body and kids have even more. We know that when you break a bone, you're going to come into hospital and we do what's called a manipulation under anaesthetic, where we manipulate the bone back to where it should be. Then we put on a plaster of Paris and it knits. So it's all good. The part that's not good about fractures is from the second the break happens until we've immobilised it. So if you think about a chicken bone, if you snap a chicken bone in two, you've got two really sharp edges. And then two sharp edges are mobile inside your child. And that's where we are concerned. So the treatment for fractures is simply immobilisation and non-weight bearing. Don't be too concerned about getting nice looking slings and bows and all that on. All about immobilisation. So if you were to fall over right now, you'll automatically self-guard your arm to a position of comfort. That is exactly where it needs to be. A child that's non-verbal, if they're limping, you have no way of knowing if that's their toe, heel, knee, hip or back. So you just have to presume that there's something wrong and get them checked out. As I said, an older child will automatically self-guard an arm and they'll tell you there's something wrong. A younger child, not necessarily, but that's where you'll be observing that they're over-picking and using things from the other side. They're not using one side. That all has to get checked out. Even the orthopedic guys won't second guess this sort of thing. They'll x-ray it. So if you think it's broken, presume it's broken and just get it checked. One thing I would say is that all the first aid books say with broken fingers or toes that you just buddy them up to the one next to them. I would personally say no to that to babies' fingers. If you've ever broken a finger yourself, they do heal, but they don't heal brilliant. So just thinking of their little pincer grips and things like that, I would personally want them to be seen by a hand surgeon.
Okay, fantastic. The last notes that we had down for a question was to talk about bleeding.
Bleeding, so in the old first aid courses we used to spend hours trying to decipher whether bleeding was arterial or venous or capillary or whatever. Don't be so concerned about that. What we are concerned about is keeping the blood inside the body for the simple reason the blood is the portal that carries the oxygen to the brain. Your job when someone's bleeding is simply putting direct pressure on the wound. And any wound where you cannot put direct pressure, let's say a nosebleed, in that situation what we try to do is slow the flow of blood to the area of exit. So you could either put on distal pressure, or in a nosebleed we put an ice pack on the back of the neck. And what an ice pack does is an ice pack causes vasoconstriction, which makes the vessels tinier, slowing the flow of blood out. With ice packs in kids, we never put an ice pack directly against the skin. Always put a buffer between the ice pack and the skin, and never on for more than 20 minutes. So 20 minutes on, 20 minutes off. And the best ice pack you can have at home is frozen peas, because you can mould them around any area nicely. If your child is bleeding and they're at the point in their life where they get quite panicky when they see blood, it's sometimes a good idea to put in a red washer into their first aid kit, so they won't get to see how much blood there is, and that relaxes them. And by being able to relax them, you keep their pulse down, blood pressure down. That will slow the progression of everything.
Fantastic tip. I love that one. I've got a child
I've
faints
stolen
at the sight
that
of
one
blood.
from somebody, don't worry. Very few of these are my ideas.
We've got a question here from Laura. Just before this ends, she would like a copy of the safety chart. Well, that's fine. We can arrange this for everybody. Yeah.
And if anybody wants a copy of the safety chart or a copy of the asthma chart, we've got the meningitis signs and symptoms chart. There's another question that I haven't answered.
Oh, we'll try and fit that one in quickly.
Or if anybody wants more information on when our next public first aid courses are or how to book in, just message away there and we'll get back to you.
We'll fit this last one in quickly.
There you go, to let you
Okay. Could we please ask Sinead to cover the current best practices for the management of tick, spider and snake bites? So we've covered ticks, so spider and snake bites.
Yeah. Okay, so the thing to remember is, being Irish, and you won't be much better than me, the Australians love talking about spiders and snakes. There's loads of all these freaky stories, and it makes people kind of a bit worried. The thing to remember is if you get bitten by a snake or a spider, they inject the venom in under your skin. That is absolutely fine, and that is no harm to us at all. It's when that venom gets to our heart that it can kill us. And a lot of people need to understand how it gets from in under your skin to your heart in order to understand how we can slow that process down. And it is not our blood supply or our oxygen or anything like that. It is another system in our body called the lymphatic system. And it is a really, really lazy system that just plods around your body day in, day out, looking for bits of infection. Now, the lymphatic system sees venom as infection, so it picks it up and it drops it into your lymph glands. So if you've ever been sick, you've got swollen lymph glands, it's because your lymphatic system's been picking up all the rubbish from around your body and popping it in here. Your blood supply goes into your lymph glands to pick up the infection in an attempt to flush it out of your body, and now it's in your blood supply. Now, our blood supply has a pump, being the heart. The lymphatic system has no pump, so it relies on our movement to be its pumps. The more we move, the faster the lymphatic system moves. So the first thing to tell anybody that ever gets a bite or a sting is to stop and drop, and absolutely no movement. That has straight away stopped the pump to the lymphatic system. Because it's such a lazy system, we can stop it further by doing what we call a pressure immobilization bandage, which is simply a tight bandage that we put all the way up either the arm or the leg, and that compresses the lymph even further. So there's loads of different ways of putting on a pressure mobilization bandage, but if you put on a tight one and you think, oh, I'm not too sure about that, just don't ever take it off, because then you're going to end up seesawing the toxin up and down the arm. So put your pressure mobilization bandage on directly over the bite, a few times wherever the bite is, then come away from the body a little bit, and then bring it all the way up to either the groin or the armpit. Then when the lymphatic system's coming around doing its rounds looking for infection and it meets the resistance of the bandage, it loses the will to live. So you've cut off the delivery of the toxin to the heart. So that is the treatment for all snake bites, and it is the treatment for a fungal web spider. We don't use it for a redback spider, simply because the pain of a redback spider is so intense that by putting on this bandage, we make the pain worse, which pushes up their blood pressure and pulse, which negates the benefit of the bandage. Also, putting compression over the venom of a redback causes ulceration. So the treatment for all snakes and for the fungal web is that pressure immobilization bandage, and the treatment for a redback spider is by an ice pack, cold compress on the site itself. And there is a really good fact sheet that you can get on all snakes and spiders from the New South Wales Poisons Information Centre. And they have a website and they have a Facebook page as well.
Yeah, I think that was the second part of Nicole's question. It was about having something that she could print to take on holiday with her.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah.
that's
and I think most of the first aid books as well have a good bit of information on that too.
Fantastic. There's one last question before we let you go. That's Niamh looking for copies of the charts. We'll make sure that Sinead is in touch with everybody who needs a copy. We are going to finish up now, but we will leave this Q&A session on the group for a good few weeks for anybody who's not managed to catch up with us tonight, which is a shame. They must be watching The State of Origin. But yeah, look, Sinead's around, she's in the group. If anybody's got any questions, please feel free to give her a call.
Absolutely. I can't promise I'll get back to you tonight, but yeah, absolutely pop on there or hop over to our Facebook page. We constantly put up little just tips and tricks, and as we come across things, good things, bad things, just new information, we pop it up on our Facebook page, so it's a good one to follow as well.
Thank you so much tonight for your time, Sinead.
No problem.
I've learned so much.
Everybody should know this.
Absolutely. Is that another question? It's a thank you from Laura.
Thank you.
Okay, ladies, that's all for tonight. Thanks very much for joining us. Speak to you soon.
See ya. Go to New South Wales.